The recording of this council meeting will be available to the public on council's website for a minimum period of 6 months. In accordance with council policy, I will now ask staff to confirm that recording has commenced.
Yes, it has.
We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the South East Nation, the Malakadee people of the Yuin River and the Lilliquanni people of the Far South. We recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. In attendance tonight we have Deputy Mayor Thorpe, Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Jessup, Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Gibson, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Burgess and Councillor Mazek. Thank you. And would you like to announce your staff, please?
Sure. Executive staff here tonight, Acting General Counsel Sandra Anderson, Director of People and Corporate Services Paddy Johnson, Director of Community and Place Lyle Grounds, and an apology from Director of Infrastructure and Assets Frank Chen. We've also got our ICT Business Systems Officer Connor Watson and Executive Assistants Olga Barth and Sandy Rustel.
Thank you. We have no apologies for tonight. We have no leave of absence and no absent. Councillors, does Anyone wish to declare an interest in tonight's agenda items? Thank you. 4, confirmation of minutes, 4.010/24. Do I have a councillor to move a motion that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council 28th of August 2024 as circulated be confirmed? Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Burgess. Does any councillor wish to report any changes? Put that motion, those. All in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Do we have any legislative items tonight? Okay. Urgent matters. I'd like to hand over to our legal, if I may, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, councillors, members of the public, we do have an urgent matter this evening, purely as a result of the fact that there was a special meeting of the General Manager's Performance Review Committee this afternoon. And as a result of some decisions made there, the report has to come to council this evening. So I do apologise, but that matter will be attended to during closed session of council meeting this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Mayor's announcements. I'd just like to make a couple.
Yeah, sorry, you need to vote on that to get it on
Oh,
the agenda.
sorry. Yeah. No. Okay.
Apologies, Mayor.
Well, do you need just a vote? Is
If
that
you can read the recommendation and then you'll
The
need a
recommendation, my apologies, the recommendation is pursuant to Regulation 8, subsection 6 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations of 2015, the urgent matter of personnel matter, being the title, to be listed on the agenda for discussion as agenda item 19.049/24.
Okay. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Jessup and Councillor Thorpe. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Thanks. Okay. I would just like to pass on to Frank and his outside crew for the work they've done in the with the winds that we've had and the storms. They've done a marvellous job. So if you can pass that on, that would be much appreciated. And I'd also like to congratulate Amy, who received a Forest Practices Award for preparation of forest practice plans. Well done, Amy. I've seen that. Someone sent that to me.
Wasn't the award was a commendation?
Well, there you go.
Runner up.
There you go. It's still an award.
Thank you.
It's an award. So there you go. All right. Public participation. There was one question taken on notice at August council meeting, and that response is on our website and is included in the minutes. Questions given on notice. There was 2 questions. One from a Miss Anne Hopwood and from a Miss Rosemary Dizen-Ward, and those responses are on our website and included in the minutes. Questions without notice. There was one question from Mr. Jeffrey Swan, and that response is on our website and has been included in the minutes. Okay, so welcome to public question time. If you have a question, as Chair, I will ask you to come forward to the lectern and identify yourself by name and area where you live. To make things fair and equitable, we have a limit of 2 questions per person and normally allocate about 15 minutes. So, would anyone like to come forward and ask a question? Yes? Just there.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I was interested, my question relates to agenda number 14.001/24, a report on the halls and clarification of the hall management. So it seems as if all not-for-profit groups will now be charged $15 per hour for meetings. The Huon Valley Hub has enabled community groups to meet without charge, and this has been invaluable. Use of the venue may decrease when the fee is imposed. I believe that the waiving of fees for markets is important, but since stall holders are charged for their stalls, the waiving of fees for markets is not consistent with charging fees for hall hire by community groups, except in that the fees go directly to the hall management committees for hall improvements and so on. Like markets, not-for-profit groups that hold meetings also add value to the community and generally make no charge for people to attend. But unlike hall management committees, they do have to pay for hall hire. If a community group holds an open event at which entrance fees are charged, then it would be appropriate for an organisation to pay a hiring fee. So my question is, first, might there be an option for a community group to request that hall hire fees be waived when no fees are charged for attendance at that meeting? Perhaps the council would like to consider that.
Thank you. Can I pass that through to
Yeah, sure.
you? Or do you? Yep.
So yeah, in response, appreciate your points, and there are avenues currently in place where groups can request fee reductions and fee waivers. So I'd encourage them to use those processes. What we're trying to do here is trying to improve the equability across how those fees are charged.
Yes, of course. I didn't see that anywhere in the report, so I just wanted to raise that. I have a second question, because earlier this year there was consultation on the future of the Cygnet Town Hall, but there's no mention of this in the report, nor for charges for use of the Cygnet Town Hall and supper room, nor mention of the Cygnet Market. So my question is, what is the situation with regard to the future of these venues? And are the hall hire rates for the Cygnet Town Hall and supper room the same as those in tables 1 and 2 on page 45 of 103?
So the report is specific to halls that are currently under council's management. So that is Huonville Town Hall, the Huonville Hub, and the Palais, as the Palais Management Committee are currently stood down. It doesn't affect other halls, and as part of the hall management review, which is still underway, not yet complete, these are changes that we've identified that would improve the situation, but we're testing them in the halls that we have under management before broadening it. But I think this is a signal to generally what we want to do is break down those different areas of halls and bring in variable pricing to improve access for people and support the booking system that we're introducing. We're not yet ready to do it with all halls because there's still stuff to unpack through that process. Yeah. We do have a workshop staff tomorrow in looking at the findings of that hall review. So we are progressing, but there is, given that it looked at the combined value and effort of 300 plus volunteers that are our hall committees, that's a lot of stuff they're doing that we're trying to work out what's the appropriate way to manage these type of services. So. Yeah, so we're on a journey. We're just trying to take some bites and trial some different ideas that we think will improve the situation from what we've heard so far.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that, and I understand the number of halls that there are. But I think it's really important to keep the community involvement there. And it wasn't totally clear to me that this was just relating to certain halls which are under council management, as it were, because the other halls, all the halls have their hall management committees.
Correct.
But only some have been included in this report.
Yeah,
Well,
sure.
yeah. Well, the Jefferton Town Hall has a controlling authority.
Yeah, that's. I'm talking about ones like Palvarata Hall, Craddock Hall. Yeah. They have their management committees, but they've not been included. It wasn't quite clear to me why.
Sure.
Okay.
Apologies for that. We'll make sure the councils are clear that we're just dealing with those council-owned ones, council-managed ones, and as per the table, it's there.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Do you have any other questions? Yes?
Caleb from Dover, through you, Mayor. Taking your minds back to the LPS hearings, Council exhibited a suite of documents, supporting documents. One of particular interest was Appendix 61, which you will all fondly remember as being an Excel spreadsheet that contains 19,963 line items of property details. What I would like, if at all possible, is to have 2 columns added and updated to that file that has, in the first instance, the adopted LPS zones, and in the second instance, the adopted LPS overlays to the corresponding land.
Okay, can I pass that through to the director? Or
Sure, I'll take that on notice. Should be achievable.
Yes, it should be rather easy because with the Inspiring Places mapping, there's a function there that you could do a bulk export with those sort of details. 20 minutes probably.
Sure.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions from the gallery? No? Okay, thank you. CEO, do we have any deputations?
No.
Petitions?
No.
I'd like to advise now that the council is acting as a planning authority as at
6:13.
Mayor, this is where I need to move some agenda items around. Agenda item 18.010/24, which is the minor amendment to subdivision 10 of 2020/A, was erroneously put in the wrong part of the agenda and should be dealt with by the planning authority. So that will need to come forward. So after we deal with the first agenda item, Snowy View Heights item, we'll treat 18.010 as 10.007.
Okay, okay,
So I'll guide you as we go into that one.
no
Yep.
worries. All right. In accordance with the provisions of Part 2, Regulation 25, the Local Government Meetings Procedure, Regulations 2015, the Council now will act as a planning authority pursuant to the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. In accordance with Regulation 25, the Council will act as a planning authority in respect of those matters appearing under item 10 on this agenda, inclusive of any supplementary items. Report number 10.006/24, proposed amendments to permit conditions for DA 15/2024 at Lot 50, Snowy View Heights, Ewanville, DA 15/2024. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Armstrong? Seconder? Thanks. Thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Armstrong?
Not at all, thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else have a comment or something on this one? Yes?
Maybe just a question in terms, like, to me, reading the request, it seems like there was almost like an omission of communication between the subdivision application and the development application, or the discrepancy between the bushfire assessments, which have been part of the changes of the recommendations. Conditions in the application. So, how does that work together? And is there a way that this can be avoided in future, or am I just misinterpreting what the request was?
Okay, I'll pass that through to the director.
So this has been it's an application that has a long history, going back to, I think, 2007, 2009. So what happened was, yes, you're correct, there wasn't a reference to those previous Bell assessments that had been done in the previous iterations of this permit. So yes, it's something that we are looking at in terms of a learning and how we then avoid this happening in the future. It's a pretty innocuous one in terms of the impact of that proposed amendment. But yes, point taken, and yeah, we are looking at how we just consider that going forward.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Robinson?
Along the same line, is it just the bells are added through this motion, or also the building areas? Am I reading that the building areas come later in the process, subject to the director's approval?
Correct.
Thank you. And in a similar line, preventing, like improving the efficiency of the process. Does a developer or proponent get to see the proposed council motion before it comes to a decision? I'm just wondering whether this could have been picked up by developer review prior to the meeting where this was approved.
Can you pass that through? Or you?
Yeah, I don't know how, they don't see the recommendation other than where developers have worked with us on, you know, we've frequently working on conditions together. So that's not, you know, you try to minimise surprises. I can't answer. I don't know if you've got an answer for whether it would have avoided it this time.
Yeah, there's circumstances where there are opportunities that we can engage, and that's like pre the recommendation going up to council. So that's something we're looking at. So just for context, in terms of my directorship of planning, it's 2.5 months in, and I'm looking at all these improvements that we can make and efficiency we can do in that space, and one of them is actually that. So, but there are instances where you can imagine where a developer might not want a particular condition. So there's obviously we have to consider those contexts, those situations when we do engage.
And obviously everybody gets to look up the meeting papers prior to a council meeting. They're on public display.
Of course. And the difficulty would be and we have pre-engaged on particulars that are, you know, to try to work out the best way for both parties. But if we were just going to open it up each time, there's a time sequence here as well to get the council papers done. We're frequently under pressure to just get it up. So yeah, I think it's just part of that bundle of what can we do to improve efficiency generally, which Director Ground's team are working through.
All right. No other? Councillor Armstrong, have you got to close or? No? All right, if that's the case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. The motion is carried. Yep.
So now, yeah, if you turn to what was 18.010 and now consider that as agenda item 10.
Page 85.
Now consider that as agenda item 10.007/24 and continue with the planning authority.
Okay. So report number 10. Everyone right? No? On page
85.
Of this document, I don't know, but
Yeah, it's on 9.
of the hard copy document.
85 is the hard copy.
And the recommendations on page 99.
Excuse me, Red, should the item on 81, building outside the envelope, is that planning authority as well?
That's not.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think that's part of the confusion that we've had in having these two just been put here.
Is everyone right now? Okay. So it's report number now 10.007/24.
Yep.
Minor amendment to sub 10-2020-A. I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Robinson? And seconder? Councillor O'Neill? Councillor Robinson, do you want to speak to this?
I'm happy with the recommendation. It looks like this has been underway for quite some time. A very slow emerging process despite its apparent importance for industrial land and availability of sites in the Huon Valley.
Yep. Do I have any other?
Yep. So the applicant has come back and wanted to change staging. Is the question that has council been doing anything in the meantime with that?
I guess it's just checking for confirmation that the delay is, or the space between, we've got some plans dated 2020.
Yes.
But the time lapse has been on the part of the developer.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes, councillor Jessup?
Thank you, Mayor. Just looking at the page 86, is the main entrance to this development going to be off Glen Road?
Correct.
So not through the suburban
No.
back streets there? I'll probably be happy with that. The suburban people.
Suburban people.
Thank you. Yep.
No worries. Any other? No? Councillor Robinson, have you got a close or are you happy? All right, well, I'll put that motion. All in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. The motion is carried. Right, so now, open to all.
They were the two items, so you're all good. And
To,
you will now return to agenda item 11, general reports.
the Mayor will advise that the council is no longer acting as a planning authority as at
6:22.
Are there any councillors tonight tabling their activities? There is? Yeah, that's good to see. Well done. Would anyone like to speak to those? You may.
It's an activity that I did this month that will appear next month, but I attended a couple of conferences this week, so I was lucky enough to spend a couple of days with the Neighbourhood House Association conference on the East Coast, and just really want to do a call out to the excellent work that those organisations do for inclusion in our community and working to build capacity. And I note with a level of sadness that the Huon Valley only has one neighbourhood house, and that's Gecko, of course. And wouldn't it be great if we one day got another one in Huonville? Because I think there's, that they do a lot of work to improve everything from food literacy through the whole. So that was my first comment, but just what a marvellous job that they do. The other thing that I attended was the TASCOS budget briefing papers. And I'll sidestep the obvious comments about pork barrelling that all political parties do, let me just say. And I do acknowledge that General Manager, that the CEO did make the comment that it's still got to get through both houses of Parliament, but if it doesn't get through both houses of Parliament, I think we'll be going to an election, so let's not hope for that. But we made a choice, Mayor, to not produce a glossy brochure or not to do a lot of chest beating and grandstanding, but we all worked very hard behind the scenes with all the political parties, and I do remember going to a number of launches and bits and pieces with both you and some of the people in this room. But I note that in the budget there's about $11.5 million worth of community assets that are going to be directly built for the council or with the council, and that's in addition to other things like the bowls clubs and things like that. But some of the highlights, I think the child and family centres, which looking at the phasing, I suspect is a 27-28 phasing, because most of the money is spent in that financial year. But then in this coming financial year, we've got the Mosquito Point kayaking platform, $100,000 for that, the 75 towards support Huon redevelopment, 69,000 towards Shipwrights Point jetty, 69,000 towards town hall amenities, 100 grand towards CCTV, at the Dover Mountain Bike Trail business plan, 125,000. I know there's been a lot of, that's been a thing that's been floating around forever, but it's hopefully going to do more than float. Jewson Town Hall, 86,000, and I think one that is really important but probably isn't enough money for 25-26 is the $3 million on the Grove intersection, but I hope that will just, if nothing else, highlight the problem to state growth and main roads, that it's a really, really dangerous intersection that I'm fearful every time I race through it 100 kilometres an hour. I sort of think, all those school buses. But it was great hearing TASCOS's take on it. Their concern obviously is that there's not enough money going into the pockets of people. but I think there is money going in the pockets of people. But yeah, this $11 million, I think, will help set up a number of really important programs in the Huon Valley around recreation, around education, and the likes of that. So it was a good experience.
Anyone else like to comment on their activities? Okay, no, we shall move on. 11.009/24. Do I have a councillor to move a motion that the general reports and minutes for the period 1 to 31st of August 2024 be received and noted? Councillor Jessup, seconder. Councillor was.
That's it.
I'll get it out. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Jessup?
I'll reserve that for now, Mayor.
Are there any questions relating to any of those reports? Yes, Councillor.
I had a few
Yep.
notes that I took. I attended the climate change workshop in Cygnet on last weekend, and as Councillor Mrozek has also mentioned, the numbers were low, so I applaud his sort of request for looking at ways of increasing participation. And I guess if we just keep using the same methodology for getting people to things, then we can't expect the numbers to really change. So I think looking at that would be good. I had a question about the Strellis, however you call it, the working group and the workshop on the 3rd of September. So this is about focusing on assessing the classification and growth potential of each locality, which I think is really interesting, but I don't remember there being a workshop, unless it was not a council workshop. So that was just a question. Who's in that working group, and
All right.
who can participate in the workshops?
Okay, thank you. I'll pass that through to the director. Yes.
The working group is run by the Strellis committee that are running the project, and the working group is consisting of representatives from the councils, so it's officers, strategic planners, and statutory planners of those various councils that contribute to that working group. They are right now an internal working group, but obviously they will be going up for engagement. Just one point on the growth boundaries. It is an interesting discussion, but we are one step ahead in that we have our strategic land use. So we are using that to directly inform the Strellis discussions.
Great, thanks, Director. Just a simple question in Capital Works. The Forces River Bridge, is that the one down on Leamington Road that was mentioned for replacement, or is there another one that I don't know about on Forces River Road? Yeah, that's.
I don't know, I'm not familiar with that bridge.
I'm quite
One of
familiar with the
250.
one on Leamington Road, obviously.
It may be that one, I don't know. With the director away, I'll
I was just intrigued that because it's sort of up for replacement / renewal, and
We'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah.
That's all right.
with regard to the Port Huron pool renovations, I noticed the double glazing with the windows of the pool area. I just wanted to make sure that the equal amount of money was spent, well, less money actually, but there was ceiling of the building, insulating of walls and ceilings was also being looked at, because you can spend a lot of money on double glazing, but it's a very small part of the surface area and only shifts it from being very, very, very poor insulation to very poor, whereas you can actually do a lot in ceilings and walls. So I just was, just with my architectural knowledge, drawing attention to that and asking that question. The artificial intelligence training, which came up in the audit panel, I was just encouraging councillors to be included in that discussion, because it sounds like from what came out of that discussion that would be important. So it has something under weed management. Yeah. Look, I know that there's never enough money to deal with all the weeds in the Huon Valley. And I was wondering whether this idea of co-investment with private landholders could be used to amplify, management outcomes. I know down on the Singing Coast Road, there's a group, who are clubbed together to deal with gorse in the area. So I guess that's a question. Can council partner with private landholders for those sorts of things?
So that group that you mentioned, we've worked closely with them, so we've assisted them around. It's a good example because it's where, so we don't, when we partner, we provide technical support, we provide support in grant writing, we provide advice and management plan development. But certainly we're always looking for co-benefits, and we have a lot of road reserve, so there's often cases where we need to manage alongside private landowners, so it's something that we actively look for. It makes sense to work together to get an outcome.
Yeah. Thanks.
Is that the lot, Paul?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's all I have.
Yes, Councillor Robinson?
A few areas of query. I might continue on the weeds theme. I found that annual report listed things that had been done, but I suspect there are quite a few gap areas around weed management. So I struggled to set, I think it's important to communicate as well as what's done. I think it's important to communicate where there's still need, because that can help prioritise resourcing and so forth. I didn't see a mention of ragwort in that report, for example, and I know last season ragwort, it just seemed to be expanding everywhere, and I think I'm starting to see it this year too. So that's I guess a request to not just say what's done, but also make sure we document gaps and things that aren't achieved, or possibilities where we see that more could be done. That's, I think, really powerful, managing expectations. And I was going to ask, who's in the Huon Valley Weed Management Working Group?
The working group is key stakeholders, so it includes state growth, parks and wildlife, Crown Land, Tas Water, Tas Networks, a whole range of stakeholders so that manage weeds in the valley, and the idea is to coordinate weed management between us, so that we're not all working in isolation.
Are there representatives on that group from people in the private land estate or farmers? Or is it more a public land focused group?
It's a public land focused group, so yeah, it's public land managers that's on there.
Just to mention there that maybe that private land estate would be a class of stakeholder worth engaging further with on that.
No problems.
So that does me for weeds. In emergency management, I was going to say similar, that the numbers of people attending those events tends to give us a feel for whether we're getting the message out effectively, or whether more could be done. That's a useful observation to pass on. And the pictures in those reports, I think, tell 1,000 words for each of those situations that have really been challenging us over the past month. So, yeah, that was great. And then on DAs, I note, so the pile to do seems to be climbing. We're not getting through them as well as could be asked or desired. I was going to ask, what are the advertising requirements for different types of DAs?
Yep. So on the DA, outstanding DAs, I don't know if you probably would have seen, we've broken it down so you can now get a sense of which are under our control and which are with the applicants, under the applicant's control. So those that are out on RFI, and we're waiting on further information, obviously outside of our sphere of control. So we have, I think, sorry, I'm still trying to find the page. I think it was 64 was the number that pops in my head. That is within our assessment period, with us under assessment. In terms of, what was the second part of the question?
What are the advertising requirements?
So advertising requirements, discretionary applications need to be advertised.
For 2 weeks?
I'd have to just confirm that, the statutory timeframes.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
Thank you. And I was going to ask about waste. There was some statistics that the proportion of waste in the recycling we send has been reducing, I think. The proportion of contamination or general waste in what we send for recycling, I think, has been reducing. There was an achievement on that last year.
Increased
Yeah.
It increased,
Yeah.
did it?
30%.
So I was going to ask actually what percentage of our recycling is actually not
Contaminated.
recyclable. That's right.
Well, it's more than what's contaminated in the bin. It's a good question. So if you reach a certain level of contamination, full stop, the entire
Lot
vehicle
goes.
goes to landfill. And it's a really serious concern. It's not just us, it's across the state. And there is a belief among some people that recycling isn't recycled. I can confirm that it definitely is. There's a whole bunch of very hardworking people doing a difficult job in Lutana, actually sorting all of our recycling by hand. And the reasons why, if there's contamination in a bin, in a recycling bin, and we're talking everything from nappies to all sorts of stuff that are clearly not recyclable. The reason the entire truck gets diverted is because the load gets tipped out on the ground. They take one look at it and say that's a work health safety hazard. The whole lot gets scooped back up and goes to Copping landfill, which ends up, whether you believe in recycling or not, it ends up costing more. And that's the key. So the cost of commingled recycling, because they're trying to get rid of as much, they're trying to recycle as much as they can, and with climbing contamination rates, the cost of commingled recycling actually has gone up 17% this year because of people's behaviour.
And I actually saw that on Monday morning when I was holding up bins for the rubbish truck to come past against the wind. And it was very easy to see what the contents of various bins were. And I actually asked the driver, because I thought maybe if he just picked up every bin, then it wouldn't get blown over again, including the recycling ones, if he could just grab what he could. But he said, no, I'll get dogged. I can't pick up the recycling at the same time. But those recycling bins, when I was standing them up, had piles of the nappies and loose household rubbish. So, yeah, it was quite daunting, and your information is making clear that it's a cost ultimately we all bear. So if there's something we can do about it for ourselves or within our community, that is absolutely worth trying to do something more than what we're doing now.
We already have some more information going out with our next rates notice, and we'll be doing some more communication and media about what are appropriate things to recycle. And we hope that people, not for the good of the planet necessarily, but at least for the good of the hip pocket, help us manage the costs. And in waste, we pass those costs straight through to consumers. So the better we behave, the more we can moderate our costs, is the simple message to all ratepayers.
Thank you for your work on that.
Yeah, and it's Cleanaway, isn't it?
Cleanaway's the recycling centre.
Yeah,
in
and
Lutana,
the costs that they're incurring, we have to pay. They're passing them on. So
if a truck gets rejected, it's tracked back to Huon Valley Council and we pay the fee. That's interesting. Do you know what the prospects for it?
Not off the top of my head, but it's significant.
it's significant, yeah.
I mean, there's more. You've got a vehicle that's, disrupting runs. It has all sorts of consequences.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen that often that an entire truck has to go, because as I said, they're trying to diligently move through it. But there's also a huge pile of stuff they pick out that goes to general waste. That's the more routine thing that's being baked in, and why we're seeing the baseline price elevating. And then there's the separate, that entire truck needs to go off to landfill, which is one-off hits. So yeah, the message is please put the right thing in the right bin, and we'll help make it as clear as we can to those on the curbside service.
And I know that the waste area, under the director, there will be things coming out. So not just in the rates, but other messaging as well. So they'll be doing some good things coming up. Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I'm assuming we don't have the technology in our bins to photograph what's going in from each bin, because I know some councils do that and actually tell the
In the
ratepayer
truck,
that
we
you
do.
can't put more nappies in.
We do have the technology.
And are we using that to target our education with all our hundreds of staff in the waste area?
We have used it in the past in certain ways. We haven't done an entire campaign to do that. It's incredibly expensive to do it, and it's not why the cameras are there to track that kind of thing. Where, knowing they're there and knowing where technology is going, the ability to have AI have a look at every single bin and automatically tell us would be, and if we did do that, the cost to people who are doing the wrong thing would be significant. So we are hoping to educate and improve things before.
And certainly any waste stuff that I've looked at, it's all about education, and we have one officer in that area. I think by the middle of next year we'll have the container deposit scheme in place. I read today, so it will all be resolved. Couple of other things, putting my sarcasm aside. The local government conference, I note the extensive write-up, and I agree with everything that my colleagues wrote, because I didn't get my words into you in time. But I'd certainly like to suggest to council that we do put a regular budget item in and we have these training allowances. I know that for at least the mayor or deputy mayor and a councillor to go, and I think we should take that in turns, because it was a really, really good experience to go across to that conference, and it certainly gave me a different perspective on where we sit relative to other.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Just confirming, I think you said ELGAT, you meant ALGA, right?
ALGA, sorry, the Canberra one.
Yeah.
And thank you for the report, and it's agree totally with it. The weed side of things. Look, I just had an observation that, similar to what Councillor Robinson was saying about, and this is an observation a bit with the whole NRM thing, that we have forgotten about private landholders a bit in our strategy, and over time, as we develop that depth of that strategy, I think it would be good to have private forestry and orchardists and farmers involved in the whole.
Quarries are private quarry owners. They're included, because we had to have a
in that weed management group.
we used to have to have a weed management plan on our quarry.
Of course, because you're transferring weeds potentially, but certainly if I know other NRM strategies in other parts of the state engage very heavily with dairy farmers keeping cattle out of rivers so they're not pooing in the rivers and stuff. But I'd certainly hope we can evolve that. And the final comment, Mayor, or question, I suppose, is with the Southern Regional Land Use Strategy, Australis Group, in our strategic land use document, we talk about investigating densification of rural living areas, and I know that has been an issue in Australis, that they've been sort of a bit opposed to it. I'm just wondering if we've had any feedback or kickback or response to that study that we were looking at doing there.
So obviously the study's on the work plan for this year, so it's in process. We've certainly raised it, that it is something we'll be doing and feeding into that process. So no, there hasn't been any direct kickback as of yet that I'm aware of. Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, councillor Arnold?
Through you, Mayor, just a couple of things which are kind of related but may not be entirely related. So back to the waste issue, just wondering if we could talk about that for a little bit. Lots of Facebook comment about the new weighbridge, just like to bring that up and touch on that. And perhaps you could explain to those. I mean, we know how it works, but if you could explain it to the greater audience.
Sure.
And maybe we could also touch on why we don't have our own recycling facility, which has also been another question that I've been asked. Why can't we have our own recycling? Well, I've tried to explain the dynamics of that are not as easy as setting one up. It's an expensive process and we're not really in a position to be able to do that, but there is some confusion about the weighbridge, the pricing in comparison to other waste transfer stations. So I thought if we could just give us a quick rundown on that, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Sure. So yes, I've seen some of the Facebook, and generally not in our favour. Although I have seen a couple that have said no, it's about the same, and that's certainly what our intention was when we set this up, and is the feedback we're getting from the stats that we see over the weighbridge is that around 10% of people are having some bill shock because they're bringing in very heavy loads, and the rest of the population are achieving about the same as what they were before, with some reporting less, and that's the average user that we based our weight-based pricing off our long history of having volume-based pricing, and knowing what at the other end of the scale, when everything goes to copping, everywhere else in the state is using weight-based. So we had a baseline that we worked back off. Our volume charging is in line with our weight-based, and ultimately the way our waste structure is it's user pays. So we pass through, and council do not make a profit, because I've seen that, I know there's things like that as well. We do not make a profit on waste. Waste is entirely independent from the rest of council. So it is users that are using that service, and the more you use it, the more you pay. You can't get more equitable than that. We are more expensive than our nearest neighbours, absolutely, and we have an entirely different set of costs. So it's not an apples and apples comparison. Of that 350 that we charge per tonne, about just under 50% of it is the direct cost to us just to get rid of it. So that's sending it to copping in a truck, it's disposing of it at landfill, and it's the state waste levy. So that's a half of our cost gone straight away that we can't control. So direct out, we don't clip the ticket on it, make a profit on it, do anything else to it. It's just put straight onto the cost line, and goes into that user pays mix. The other 50% is our management costs, our overhead, which includes, we offer as a council free recycling. Recycling is not free to council. Recycling costs significant money. We have to truck recycling up again to Lutana. So fundamentally waste is a logistics business. The cost is in cartage, and our key difference to a lot of other places is our distance. We're 65 kilometres from copping, and then further we run 3 waste transfer stations. So we have internal cartage, which also adds significant cost. So ultimately all waste, including recycling, gets bulked up into Huonville to get economy of scale, to put into a bigger truck, a compacted truck, and haul it out of here to minimise those logistic costs. So recycling is free to the public. Recycling is not free to council. So that's in there. Then we have our internal transport that I've already touched on. We've got all our equipment, the maintenance, the hire, the renewal of all that stuff. We've got our staffing costs. We've got general site costs, licenses, electricity, all those type of things. We've also got Environmental Protection Authority administrative costs. So about 50% of that thing is our management overhead for very tangible things, and the rest of it is, as I said, money we pay at the end, ultimately at the gate at copping. So we are reflecting the true costs of running that business in our waste charges, and our true costs are different to other municipalities. The key difference to Kingborough, our nearest neighbour and the one that I've seen the most commentary against, Kingborough have processed double the amount of waste that we do. So they get an immediate economy of scale. There's a certain number of people you need to run to operate a toll bridge, a weighbridge, have safe operation of the site. We've got all that at an absolute minimum. We've actually invested in that in recent times because we were so reliant on volunteers. But we are running that in a way that it's safe. There's a minimum level. The minimum level for us is about the same as for Kingborough, yet they have double the amount of waste. So they're able to distribute that cost of those staff over a far greater revenue stream. So that's one example of why our business is very different to others. And I think I've unpacked the rest. We will be putting out a media release with a detailed breakdown of our costing and some more information for people so that they can understand that we're not trying to price gouge. We are in a situation where the costs of everything, as we know, are going up, and we are doing and have done over the last couple of years a whole range of efficiency improvements in how we handle our waste. We've coming out of Signet, we've significantly increased the weights of those transshipments by putting machinery there to pack that waste down. We're a logistics business. All that the savings from that were about $60,000 a year. Again, council not profiting from it, just ploughed straight back in and is bringing down the cost for consumers that are using our weighbridges. We've done the same thing with cardboard transport. We've re-engineered all our green waste that all used to go to Copping and was just disgracefully landfilled for forever. The fact that we now process that more, turn it into a product and sell it, the benefits of doing that were significant savings, and they have been put straight back into the bottom line to reduce costs for people tipping. So we are doing everything we can to improve efficiency on the site, and the weighbridge isn't just about getting better details of every load going over. The data that it's collecting on it's actually not just Southbridge. We've got a new payment systems at Signet and Dover, so we've got far better data on waste collection. We also measure the weights of every single truck from JJ Richards, our curbside contractor. So our ability to, as we go through every year when we reset rates and charges, we will do another full review as we did last year, but with far better data, and we will see where we end up. We want to get it right. We don't want to be gouging anyone, and we are also actively looking at what we can do on some of these difficult or weighty waste streams, because there is a state target to get waste out of them. So we are targeting those areas that are costing the most. Things like plasterboard, things like tyres, all these things, we're trying to find alternative streams for them. Our best play is we are a transfer station, so the more we can source separate, and if we can provide an incentive for that, that's what will help us out. Ultimately, though, we need end-of-trip facilities. So if we start separating plasterboard, for example, we need somewhere where that can be bulked up and can be processed into another product. So we're part of a big ecosystem that is waste in the state. We have very close connections. We're working very hard. The Mayor is on the board of Tas Waste South, which is the peak body for the southern region of Tasmania. We know how important waste is, and we are doing our damnedest, but we have particulars of our business and our locality that mean, yes, we are more expensive than our neighbours. Why can't we have a recycling facility here? Because if we think waste is expensive now, if we bring it down here, it'll be even more expensive, is the very simple answer. It takes people, and we don't have economy of scale.
There's two in the state. That's it. You know, the whole state has two waste.
So when we say, for us, recycling, it's again that source separation. So if we're going to do more with recycling and across the whole waste stream, it's collect more recyclables, and also if we can push down the numbers on improve the quality of the streams, so less commingled recycling. Commingled recycling costs more than clean recycling. Dirty glass costs more than clean glass. And that's all part of the education piece to try to bring these things through, but ultimately as well where it all goes to, there needs to be a price incentive there that we can then pass back through to our people before we bother making that, not bother, but before it makes sense to ask people to improve their their processing of their own waste.
Because we do have good people doing good things with their rubbish. When they go into the transfer station, they are separating, they are doing everything
Dumping
possible.
ridiculous.
Yes, yes, so.
And I think people need to remember too that, you know, there was a lot of comments about wet waste and how it weighed more, and that council should be responsible for picking up. Well, I think people need to take some responsibility for their waste as well. Like, if you don't want to pay more, reduce your waste or try and keep it dry. You know, council can't be responsible for it raining. The storm damage waste might have been a whole different conversation, perhaps.
That is entirely
Irrelevant to.
yeah, well, it's not irrelevant, but it has its own line, because the government we can.
In that case, the
yeah.
government step
Yes,
in.
but I mean-
ultimately, there's
Yeah.
people will learn, as they always do. A change occurs, and you learn that yes, leaving a mattress in the rain would take the cost of a mattress from about $7 maybe to tip, and could very quickly turn that into more like an $80 mattress
Yes.
to get rid of. But it's important to note that wet mattress, once put in our skip and trucked up to Copping, that's the cost council will be receiving for it as well. So, you know, we don't think that, you know, we should all be paying for our neighbour who is putting in unnecessary costs into the waste stream.
And that's it. And it's one of those situations, it's a business by itself, really. So people need to take responsibility for their own waste. People say, well, we're just going to throw it in the bush. It's already been thrown in the bush. That also costs community to clean that up. I don't think people realise that either, that somebody has to go and clean that up. That's a few thousand a year as well. And how much was the weighbridge finally, and who paid for that? That was my other question that people wanted to know about. It was 400 and something thousand, wasn't it?
Yeah, in that.
Yes.
That
And where
order,
did the money come from
we
that?
have grant funding as well as council
Thank you,
contribution.
because that's what I thought also, and that's what I did tell them, because,
If it's important to put those numbers in the media release, I'm happy to do that as well.
yeah, it would be good, because people think that we have wasted money that should be spent on something else, even though it was partially grant funded.
The other component to that is one of the things, so we've actually had customers asking for a weighbridge
Yes.
for years.
Yes.
Because of the subjectivity of volume base. So this was a response to customers, and council had been trying to do this for a long, long while. And we're also just at the tipping point before we reach a certain tonnage of processed waste where we actually must have a weighbridge as part of our commitments within the state scheme.
Yeah.
So the whole world now is run on data, and we are needing to modernise, and this is the result. So it's got lots of advantages, and it has absolutely differentiated heavy loads and lighter loads. As I said, a normal load, the average load, is tracking about the same as it was before, because, as I said, our volumes are also based on the same funding model. But yes, people that are bringing in heavy stuff have had bill shocks.
Is there and I think one thing to get across in the press release is this is a statewide, well, it's a national agenda, but it's a statewide agenda that the waste levy is driven by the state. But is there any chance, I don't know if you've got the capacity with your staff to do a FAQ that we just hand out to everybody who goes through the weighbridge for a while, that just comes into, well, does wet stuff cost more? Well, yes, try making it dry,
Yeah,
and just
we're actually talking about some tips and things as well.
Yeah, just to help
only
people
just-
educate.
Yeah, put a tarp over your trailer, and the other really important one as well is that users, as you arrive at the waste transfer station, and you now do a figure of 8 kind of loop, you've got the opportunity to, whilst it is multiple passes over the thing, there's differential pricing for different things. So anything you can get out, general waste is the most expensive thing on the site. So if you can pack your vehicle differently to make it efficient for you to get that stuff off. So if you're coming in with steel, take the steel rate. Go over, pay for steel, put your steel there, come back over, do your general waste. Also, because we offer free recycling, if you pack your vehicle differently, and the amount of recyclables that we see every single day, and the staff just shake their head, that could be deposited for free, and many of them are heavy, pull up deposit those things before you reach the weighbridge, and you are not paying for them.
And
So
design
this-
that way to take you past all those.
And we will be. There's an ongoing project to modernise that facility, and I'm actually really proud of how different it looks in the space of 2 years. It's been cleaned up, it's been professionalised, it's great. The staff are amazing. We do need to put signage and some more investment into that recyclable section and have more. We're hoping that the staffing coverage we've got can actually go out and start to assist people with reclaiming recyclables before they get to the weighbridge, so that we can help people. We're not trying to gouge people, we're actually trying to meet our obligations to reduce waste in the state.
And if any councillor's got any spare minute, go down there and just watch, go into the weighbridge and just, yeah, cool, yeah, yes,
We're going to talk to
Yeah,
operators.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's a really good setup.
yes, yes.
I think that was a really comprehensive and compelling description of what's the situation. I was wondering whether we should cut that bit of the video out. No, I'm serious.
I might have said
Yeah.
something wrong there.
I don't think you did. But, you know,
Yeah,
reading stuff is quite hard for some people to get, whereas I think just hearing that would be pretty convincing.
yeah, I think so, too. We've talked about this on,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we're actually looking at, it's a good time to talk about it in brief, but medical services and this one, and then sky's the limit. But we are looking at, there's ways to do quite low cost infographic type videos to break some of these complicated issues down. So we are looking at how to do that and do it quickly. We know comms is not our strong suit, and we're trying to improve that.
Which was pretty clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
Yep.
good, wasn't it? Yeah, yeah. And we must say that the staff down there are doing a marvellous job, even in hard times when people are not happy. Yeah, they are doing a really good job, so
Thank you.
very much. Do I have any other? Forgot where I was now. Okay. Councillor Jessup, you, no? Okay.
Nothing in the comprehensive report,
Thank you. All right, well, if that's the case, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, the motion is carried. On to councillor workshops.
Thank you.
Oh, I know what, it's my thumb. Yep, yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
I'm sorry. Okay, yes, council workshops. 11th of September, we had the disaster resilience strategy. There were comments taken. So council staff had drafted some comments back to the state disaster relief strategy, and they were distributed and informed. The final version was informed by councillors' comments to that. We also had a draft policy review on stormwater management, code for tenders, and our child and youth safe policy. Again, draft policies were distributed, and we've incorporated councillors' comments and feedback into the final drafts. We also, Director of People and Corporate Services, led an update on our process this year for undertaking our budget timing, our budget process, our annual budget process, which is coming much earlier this year in a staged approach that will allow us time to more adequately develop business cases, more adequately take on board councillors' more detailed feedback in their own budget bids, and ultimately looking at ways to engage the community in that budgeting process as well.
Thank you. 13.1, councillor questions. There was one question taken on notice from August's meeting from councillor Robinson, and that the answer has been included in the minutes. 13.2, there is no questions, councillor questions given on notice. Councillors, are there any questions without notice? Councillor Jessup.
Thank you, Mayor. Without names or drills, I'm just wondering if there's any chance for the CEO to give us a rough outline of where we're at with the positions that we created in the restructure, and just where, roughly where we're at with filling those, and if we're having any particular challenges, maybe filling any of the positions.
I might handball that to the director because I may have given her a
Heads up, maybe.
heads up. Yeah.
She's got notes.
Through you, Mayor. We were looking for the new positions in the restructure to be 13, and we were looking to fill stage 1 of those, and there were 8 in stage 1 with 5 in stage 2. So stage 1 was 24, 25. We've filled all the positions bar 2. One of those is because we're waiting on we're staging the recruitment, and now we're waiting for the director to return to be able to fill that one. And another one was a trainee position that we have to go through a procurement process with a GTO provider to be able to go and get that sort of process on board. And in the interim, we've just got some support through other ways to be able to help us get through that. So we've been quite good from that perspective to be able to fill those positions, and we were probably looking towards the end of September to get all those positions filled. So we've done pretty well, really. We haven't really increased our recruiting team as well, and we've done all the recruitment in-house. So that's been really, really good. So a big shout out to the people in safety unit. They've done a really, really good job, as well as all the people who've sat on the panels. And we have had some externals that have helped us out as well, because obviously with our positions, they're merit-based. So we've made sure that where internal candidates or conflicts of interest have raised that there are some, that we looked at either alternative panel members or also to bring in third parties from other councils or other areas to ensure that we do have as unbiased as we can on those selection recruitments.
So they've been advertised, all those positions. So I'm heartened to hear the commitment to advertising and external input to panels. So thank you for driving that executive team. I met one of our new trainees, I think, today in the kitchen from downstairs. So it's good to see our commitment to bringing in trainees across the organisation. I know you're passionate for that, Patty, so thank you for driving that, because if we don't train the young people for tomorrow, we're screwed.
Yeah. And we are looking, that's why we're looking at that sort of a standing panel around GTIs, and they'll be for trainees across council. So that's probably, as you know, my passion, and I'll be trying to drive that as much as I can, along with, consideration around a graduate or cadet program for other positions that are around that technical aspect.
It might be worth pointing out, you may or may not know, but in our child services unit, the Mayor and I were down with MP Julie Collins today, talking about a recent grant that we got for Dover and Geeveston childcare centres, which is a sustainability grant, and the team do an amazing job in skill development for young educators in childcare. And
We're on the job trainee level 3s, I think, is that right?
yeah, we've got a really
You could put an award in maybe for the training awards next year. You might.
maybe we should, but I just wanted to shout out to the team that they're like a conveyor belt of trainees, and it was great to have support from the federal government to acknowledge that, how important it is to grow your own and support skills development from our own local community.
When we did the state cabinet here, the pollies went down there, and I was with a couple of the ministers when they were talking to the young people who were trainees, and they were just so appreciative of having not only a place to do their learning in, but also it was clearly acknowledged that the senior staff were very committed to training them and stuff. So that's very excellent. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Burgess and then Councillor.
Yes, Mayor, I've got a little question on waste, and it's in response to the person that asked the question, Rosemary Dixon Ward. And in the response, there is a conditional curbside waste services are offered as an opt-in basis. Now, I presume that means that they can actually, if the truck's going past, they can drag it up to the road and get it picked up.
That's correct.
And then Yep, that's what I thought. Now, my question is that the other option is that you've put forward to them that if it's inconvenient to drag that bin up there, you can take it to the tip. So my question is, if they take it to the tip, do they pay for that? Or has it already been paid for in their rates? For those particular bins?
Yeah, good question, good question.
They'd have to pay for that.
Yeah, they'd be paying for it.
So, yeah, but if they left it on the side of the road with a truck, they wouldn't be paying for it.
Would they pay bin?
They paid for it, yeah. So they're getting paid, they're paying double, right, basically, if they take it to the tip.
Well, the issue is that the truck look, curbside service is an urban service, and so we're always really carefully looking at where the extensions go, that you need a level of urbanisation density. It's basically how many metres a truck rolls to service each bin. So the significant amount of dollars in that service is for the amenity, the service of the truck going past. So whether you use that or not is up to you. That truck is still rolling past there, and you're a residential property in a urbanised enough zone that it makes sense and that's desirable for people. So I'm sure people would argue that they're paying twice, but they are just not taking advantage of a service that is going past their doorstep.
Mind you, when if they take it up to meet where the truck is,
Yeah,
they must have chose to have the bin
but that's right.
because it's
They
not.
chose to have the bin, yeah.
That's right. So
So then it's their choice later
Yeah,
on to
that's
take it to the tip
Yes.
and pay for it.
because the reason why they haven't got it in there is because of when they surveyed, there wasn't enough people.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
fair enough.
Yes.
It's now clear, thank you.
You got Luke's, yeah?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. My question goes towards participation in surveys and workshops that are conducted by council. Are there any numbers on participation rates and demographics that are participating in particular? Just as a little bit of background to this question, as Councillor Gibson mentioned before, we both attended the climate change strategy workshop in Signet last weekend, and there have been maybe, I don't know, what you said, 15, 16 people attending. That was including Paul and myself. It was a great workshop, and I absolutely appreciate that council is taking those steps. I think this is widely appreciated in the greater community. But where I'm heading with this is, if there are only 16 people attending in Signet, or where there is a population in Signet of maybe around about 1,500 people, that's a representation of 1%. Additionally to that, having a bit of knowing the community, having been a member of various community groups and having attended various council workshops on a variety of topics, you can't help but see mostly the same people. So representation will be just very one-sided. And so what I would like to know is there any evidence of the data who's participating in those workshops and surveys? And if we see that participation levels are not high enough, are there any ways we can identify barriers and remove those barriers to achieve higher participation rates and then higher identification with policies or strategies that we're developing?
Yeah, and look, what day was the?
It was Saturday.
Yeah. So I suppose that we need to look at what else is happening on that given Saturday in our not just in Signet but in other areas as well. I suppose that has a bearing on football season. Local had finished, but the other hadn't. So there is a few things that could have a bearing, but I don't know whether there is.
Yeah, it's a topic. It's a frequent topic of discussion for the executive. We're this week talking about it again as we consider engagement to track and understand our community vision, and we're looking at around a livability strategy to bring all our strategies together, and the importance of getting it right. So on surveys like that, they need to be statistically sound and representative, and there's absolutely ways to do that. What our experience has been is that unless you really control that, you don't get the input. So what you're seeing on the ground in workshops is typically an older demographic that are interested in engaging on a range of subjects, and others, young families, youth, etc., just do not show up. We also have we're consulting on a range of things, and we're sometimes startled by, I think, Southport toilet renovation. So sort of pick the sort of different designs, got over 400, I think it was nudging 500 people participated in that, and that yet something like climate change gets far lower. So our community engagement officer has a good pulse check of what's important to the community and where they're engaging. We're thinking about different options. I don't think there's a particular silver bullet. You ultimately got to get people to turn up. We're trialling technology, so like QR codes. People may have seen them around. Well, certainly people have seen them because we're getting feedback from them on how we're going. So that's like a play to get young families to be able to participate because they're in a park with a mobile phone, and we just make it easy. So take it to the people, and that's the kind of work that we've done on larger engagements, where we take it to the Huon show, the local market, be at a playground when we're doing a playground engagement on the weekend. So try to get into those different demographics. But obviously, the greater the investment that we put into it, or the higher priority it is, the greater the investment. But we have one community engagement officer, and I'd be, as the executive and councillors talk about, particularly this livability strategy and where we're going, we really need to drill down to how do we get this stuff right. And I'd be very open-minded to ideas you've got on how we're going to do it differently. I think it's ultimately you've got to have multiple streams engaging on the one thing to make it engaging for different people. And there's also a trust item. So you've got to make this stuff meaningful. You can't just be consulting, engaging when there's no possible outcome. So it's really important to be very clear that if it's just an information or if it's an engagement, what level of engagement people want. And often we find the community either wants full engagement and want to co-design it, or they just want to be informed about it. So it's a tricky space, but you're not wrong. We do see the same suspects.
Look, I'm not concerned about the number of consultations that are taking place or the number of workshops that are taking place. It's just the representation and the participation in particular. If we creating circumstances where just more people feel enabled to come to those workshops, I'm pretty sure the interest is there, but just time is always tight. Something else is always not right. Yeah. People have kids to look after, and that will be often a hurdle. Yeah, just interested in kind of identifying those barriers, removing them, and get more people on board to get a better picture.
I don't think we can remove barriers to busy lives. What we can do is create opportunities for different streams of engagement on the one subject. It's technology, it's face to face, it's during the week, it's weeknights, it's weekends. But all of that costs just a greater investment, and that's what we need to come to grips with, and to go how far do we want to go on any one sort of subject area to make the investment worth it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. Just touching on that point. I think I'm trying to be diplomatic, but I'm not very good at it usually. I think it's the climate change word. For a lot of people, how climate change frightens some people. I think climate change is often misunderstood. I think there's a somewhat old-fashioned belief of what climate change used to be. I don't think it's an ignorance. I think it's almost a hesitancy to go there because they think that you're going to have the green component being pushed down your throat about, all this sort of old-fashioned thought process, but of course it's not like that at all, it's all about going forward sustainably and what we can do as a community and that's a very old-fashioned, outdated idea. But I think if we could sort of zhuzh that up and make it a bit more positive and maybe not focus so much on climate change and actually start to explore other options on what we could name that, people probably would engage on a much more interested level. I do wonder too if we could not do it at a hall, because the hall is cold and not particularly welcoming, definitely cold. So I wonder if we could take it to the people, perhaps liaise with other organisations, or I don't know, I'm just sort of sitting outside and try and package it perhaps with something else that involves climate change, like town strategies, or, you know, if we could incorporate things so that people can join the dots and realise that it's not just, you know, people hanging from trees, because that's what a lot of people do think when they hear climate change.
I guess climate change is one example. I think Councillor Mrozek's, and I take your point entirely on that,
Yes.
naming, etc.
Yes.
But it's a more general thing on a range of engagements as well. So it's a problem a bit greater than climate change. I think the ultimate solution to that, and where we're as we develop our response and our renewed strategy and moving towards livability and place-based planning and all this kind of stuff, is that you start turning engagements. We want to change engagement into around a place and multiple topics that ultimately all boil down to how do we make this place more livable for you. That is what our purpose is. We shouldn't be we should be trying to minimise singular issue consultation and singular issue consultation that typically turns into tell us what your problems are. We've got a community vision. We know a lot of the problems. We don't shy away from the problems that are out there. We still need to hear that, but we really need to be workshopping with people. And I think what would engender more engagement is workshopping with people. What are some solutions around your place and across multiple topics? And under that kind of guise, if we go back to your climate change example, climate change is just about how are we being resilient, how are we making sure that our place is still, we don't get flooded and we're bushfire, we're mitigating our bushfire risk and those kind of things. It's not about, you can scale it all up to climate change, but when we're talking about what we can do as a community and as a council, it's about what are the solutions we can get. We're not addressing climate change, we're addressing impacts that may be related to that. So it's that engaged, holistic consultation about working together, problem solving, not problem identification as much, which is what typically we're often doing.
So we probably just need to add a few extra words to that, maybe, to engage people a bit more. Or...
I think at a workshop you're always going to have far less engagement than a situation with, what's the cricket club called? Franklin Cricket Club Rules, whatever it may be, because a workshop is more than 2 minutes on a thing, and to be completely honest, if you're expecting people to contribute through workshops without remuneration, it's not a modern engagement strategy, and it's just never going to be large amounts, especially in the UN.
I do notice that they around a couple of the crop swap places, they have little things set off to the side where you can, you can engage about different topics that are happening in areas and things. So I think some of the groups are finding ways to do it themselves to gain the information that they...
Like on Market Day.
Yeah.
Market Day would be a great day to do it. Like, that's what I mean, incorporate it with something else.
That's what I mean, just different channels, different ways to get
Yeah, but good thought, and keep thinking about it. Yeah. Yes, Council?
We've seen a number of DAs with Part 5 agreement components over the past few months, and I think we've got a tweak to one coming on tonight's agenda. I'm interested in asking for some comment from staff about the administrative load or cost burden of these Part 5 agreements compared to perceptions of their effectiveness over time. Context to that, we often apply our administration and charge a fee for that. You charge a fee for your dog registration or your DA lodgement or so forth. I'm not aware of us charging a fee around Part 5, so maybe we do. Does it cover and I don't necessarily want us to. Over-administration itself will tend to kill out common sense and efficiency over time. So have we got that right, or are there some inherent problems with that process in terms of its rigidity, and the comment later on tonight that it doesn't align with the planning authority process? When we sit as a planning authority on a DA, we actually have no charter to make decisions on a Part 5 that's related to that. That's my interpretation. So I'm after some comment on whether that's the right tool, or whether it could be improved, or whether is there another approach? I guess I get concerned too when I see a Part 5 that's becoming incredibly detailed about management of a particular, often biodiversity species or environmental constraint, that in my experience might be better managed over time by some monitoring and adaptive management. Bird nests don't always stay in one place. Sometimes extra ones appear, that sort of thing. So, is it too detailed for that really formal legal process of putting a covenant on a title?
Just personally, before I hand it over, I think if it's on there and you're a buyer, it makes you aware of what's on that, so that you're fully aware of what's on that block if you're looking at buying it.
Yeah, I take your point, and I think I need to take it on notice. It's not something that's front of mind for me right now, and I don't want to. There's a lot to unpack in there, but it's worth investigating. And like most things around here, there's room for improvement.
All right. Thank you. Any other? Did you want to make a comment? No?
Just take it on notice. We'll come back on.
Yeah, okay. All right, no other questions? There's no motions tonight? No motions tonight? No? Okay. We're up to report number 14.001/24. Request for fee waiver. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Yes, Councillor Gibson and Councillor Armstrong, seconder. Wish to speak to this, Councillor Gibson?
Yeah, just had a question, really. I don't quite know why the markets are being specifically pulled out rather than, general community things like information sessions, games, events, local theatre. All of those things are less profit-based in many ways than a market. So my question is, why is there not just a general not-for-profit community event rule?
Because there already is.
So why are we changing it?
So
marketing.
these are, a not-for-profit wanting to hire a space and do their thing can already do that. And as Dr. Smith asked and pointed out earlier, we have that $15 fee, so there's already a reduction there, and we have an existing, so there's no change to that, and we have an existing fee waiver discretion that's at the director's discretion to waive, and that frequently gets used for community benefit. So groups that are doing games nights and things like that you've pointed out, that is just a very simple hire. They come in, they do their thing, no problem. A market is being singled out because the complexity of a market is such that we're relying on community hall committees to do these things, and they enjoy favourable terms because they hire it for free because they are the hall committee, so they don't pay any hire, and they come under council's insurance. So looking at alternatives, and for the Franklin Palais as a very as a specific example, the markets with the suspended committee, the market can't run without someone having to come in and pay for it and get insurance and all that overhead.
But Cygnus never had a committee, and we always have a market.
They've got a long-standing arrangement that they're doing, and an external that's running it.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's changed hands a few times. But
it has, but yeah, that's.
So why wouldn't the same arrangement happen at wherever else, any hall?
because this arrangement is actually starting to mirror what's already happening at Signet, but has never been formalised because we don't have adequate management structures for our halls.
Right, okay.
Hence the hall review, hence doing something.
And is this
here.
jumping the gun on the hall review is my other question.
No, because the markets at the moment, that's, like, as we know, that's what, how some people make their money. And the market, and Franklin market isn't going ahead this month, but it will the next month, is that correct?
That's the intent, because under this, by removing this barrier to markets and then doing something that's similar to Signet, we can trial this other way, which we think is then a model that can, and it's been informed by what we've heard from the whole review process, but we're trying to act on something now to get underway. And the other component of it is it's not just about markets, it's also about the breaking halls down into hireable spaces, so they're not just one big blob.
Yeah, we had this discussion at the AGM for the Scout Hall.
Correct. And we've heard it everywhere. So by doing this, again, we're not jumping the gun on the hall review. It's something we've heard everywhere. We have a mechanism in a system called Space to Code that we want to trial. We want to get it right by putting those different spaces in, have variable pricing, allow people to utilise more spaces, and also put in some clear rules on those hiring terms around what your kind of entitlements within those rooms, etc., are, so that it just is, to clean some of the conflicts we've had when people are trying to use one community space. So it allows us to get some information towards the end of it, when we are getting close to being able to make some decisions on following the hall review, but it gives us some capacity to try this stuff and get on with it, and yes, get the market up and happening.
Can I suggest an amendment, Part D, to say that this is temporary until the hall review comes out, and then it will be incorporated into the halls review, rather than just so that, because we're in the process of doing that, and we're going to have workshops on it and sort it all out.
That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it probably will be just go ahead, but it'll be incorporated into that rather than being a standalone.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did say we're trialling it, so the intent is to improve it and do whatever. But if you want that addition, that I don't have that doesn't change what we're trying to do, so that's all good.
So what would your wording be?
Would be Part D, that this arrangement will stand until the whole review is complete.
Are you happy with that?
Councillor Gibson, I just went rev with the pen there. This is temporary until finalisation of the outcome of the whole review.
That'll do. I don't know who seconded it.
Yeah, are you happy with that?
Yep.
And again, just quickly, just in response to Dr. Smith's question before, at item 4, it does say that it's within council managed halls, these being Huonville Town Hall, Huonville Hub, and the Palette here in Franklin. And that then also follows in the tables at the back. So we're only talking about those 4 halls.
Not Judbury?
No.
They have their community committees.
All right. Yes.
So the money raised currently for hall committees, or in the other halls, goes to the hall committee for.
Correct.
So, I do take Dr. Smith's comment about not-for-profits that are not charging for entry, and be they a small club or association, or often doing things for the benefit of the community. So I'd certainly like to ask you, CEO, to consider in the whole paper that we look at how we, do we bother charging? Because it's almost not for those sort of groups, because you could say charge $5, but then that's hardly worth collecting the fee.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So we haven't contemplated that here. We've kept it parable, and when you actually look at, to Dr. Smith's point, the majority of cases we are exercising that discretion and saying, no, you can use it for free. So it makes a lot of sense, but through budget process, we'll bring it to you and say, what's the loss of revenue potential, but also here's the benefit. And I think we're probably likely to land somewhere like that. Yeah. But at the moment, with this paper, no change to that status quo. We still have that discretion.
All right. Anything else, councillor?
No, that's fine. Thanks, Mayor.
There's no other. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. The motion is carried. Report number 15.032/24, review of Delegated Authority, Building Act 2016. I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Gibson and Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Gibson.
Well, this is as per the workshop discussion. We don't have anything really to add. No, I think it's sounds fine.
Thank you. Do I have any other? No? All right. We don't have any other. And you don't have a close. I'll ask all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors and the motion is carried. Report number 15.033/24, development of a safeguarding children and youth policy. I refer councillors to a recommendation. Do I have a councillor move? Councillor Jessup, seconder. Councillor, yep. I'll get it. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Jessup?
Just briefly, Mayor, the reason why we've developed this policy is obviously in line with state government changes, and those state government changes have come out of the inquiry into abuse of children in Tasmania in institutional settings. I note that the government has put a large investment into this, millions of dollars over the next few years. I note that they've invested nothing in local government to implement this, and this is a significant cost. We have to, as a responsible organisation, we have to take responsibility for events that are happening where children are, where there's not an existing structure. But it is a cost that I think we should be happy to pay, because there is no more heinous destruction of trust in young people than to have them abused. And in my daily job, I deal with many young people who have had that appalling events happen to them. And anything we can do as responsible citizens, I think we should. And I note that we've recognised roles within the organisation that take that, and it's a serious commitment. And look, I am concerned about the staffing implications and how we manage that, but it's a good investment in our community. So I commend the policy and the motion, Mayor.
Look, not once would anybody think that this isn't needed. The hard bit for local government has been implementing it and the cost to local council. But the idea of what is there is definitely, so. Okay, if I've got nothing else to say on that, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's all councillors. The motion is carried. Number 15.034/24, review of the code for tender and contracts. Gov.Corp 013. I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report. I have a councillor to move the motion. Councillor Gibson, Councillor Robertson.
Once again, we workshop this, and I'd just like to say that it's great to see something so streamlined and simplified, and good processes is what we really want, and this is definitely leading down that path. So, and in an area of assessing tenders and contracts, it's incredibly important.
Yeah, and I think this is number 3 that we had at workshop, and I believe that done a really good job on taking all our points of view that we had and put them into the document. So thank you very much for that. Yes.
I have a quick, seeking a quick clarification. I think we talked about this at the workshop, and I just want it to be on the public record. So clause 11.4, which talks about the establishment of a tender subcommittee, it says tenders will be evaluated, those tenders obviously over a certain amount, will be evaluated by an evaluation committee established by the Chief Executive Officer or delegate, consisting of at least 4 persons who have expertise in the subject matter of the procurement, including cross-departmental representation. It then goes on and says that an external service provider or a service provider can be brought in for expertise, but they have no voting rights. The thing that I want to clarify is those 4 persons on the established selection committee can include external representatives if so nominated by the delegate. They don't all 4 have to be council staff members.
I can answer through the Mayor, Councillor. The regulations are silent on that point. As a practical point, from what I've seen over the years on our evaluation committee to date, 99% of the time, those 4 persons minimum are going to be internal staff. The financial capacity and budget for the engagement of 4 as a minimum, external staff, professionals across various teams, it wouldn't be there. So
I'm not saying that. So all I'm saying is if for example, we go to another council that has certain expertise in running FOGO plants, for example, would we be able to go to another council and say, or another organisation, not necessarily paid, but a member. It's a bit like with selection panels. We sometimes bring people in just to give a different lens sometimes, but we might not be able to answer that, and I accept there might be legislative impediments, but if we can at some point clarify it, that if it is under the CEO's delegation to have a non, because how I read that, it says it's really saying only council staff members, and if you want anybody else, you have a paid consultant to advise the selection committee.
yes.
I don't know if that's necessarily best practice from taking on the recruitment, for example, that there might be conflicts of interest with people working with the existing contractors within council, so we might take out a layer of our management, and it would be nice to have maybe a manager from another organisation that might not have that relationship or something. I'll float that. We might not be able to answer it, but
Well, are you wanting a change to the policy now?
I don't know.
Because I made all the other changes that you requested during the workshop, and I've identified those.
Yeah, no, that's good. I don't believe in making changes on the fly, because I think they're often bad changes and legislation dependent. I think it's vague enough to be interpreted, and I'm just wanting us to not limit ourselves, but maybe to investigate that and behind the policy.
We can definitely work in or embed the flexibility for decision-making on a case-by-case basis, given the nature of the procurement, and we can embed that into the document that supports the evaluation committee and its selection criteria. So there could be a range of options, and the responsible delegate who is running that particular procurement process could look at the options and make a decision about what the components or the component elements of that evaluation committee is going to be. So there's going to be room and flexibility built in. Yeah. Are you happy with that?
I'm happy with that, and obviously raising it, you guys will go away and think about legislation and kind of, but especially things like IT equipment, or we might go to a larger council that has a bigger thing than we've got.
Indeed. Okay.
Yeah, the intent makes entire sense. Yep.
Okay. Yes. Councillor Robertson.
I'm hearing Councillor Jessop's question as being, is the key part of your question on whether that potential external participant has a vote or doesn't have a vote?
No, the second part of the question, where a specific contracted service provider, that's what I read that as, has come in as an advisor. Normally that person wouldn't have a vote. They'd say their piece and bugger off. But the 4 people, like on a selection panel for a recruitment, they'd be the 4 people sitting around making the decision. If it's only within the organisation in a very technical area, it might be better to have somebody from outside who has more experience than having one person with experience and 3 other people who go, well, I don't know.
So ultimately, there's enough vagary in the wording that if the legislation permits, and we'll go and look at that it would give us the opportunity to get an external, say another council person with skills in this, and they could come on as a voting member of the panel.
Yep.
That's simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Do you have any other? Nothing else? No. Okay, well, I'll put that forward. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. The motion is carried. Report number 15.035/24. Lease of the Craddock Fire Station being part of Craddock Park located at 8243, 8247 Channel Highway, Craddock. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. I'll have a councillor to move the motion. Okay, Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Gibson. Councillor O'Neill.
I know, it's all pretty straightforward, and just thank the Craddock Fire Brigade for the service to the community. Very much appreciated.
We'll have any other? Yes, Councillor Gibson?
Look, I just had one minor concern, which was around the shared driveway, and wondering whether we should move the boundary of the lease to the west side of the drive so that it's clear that you've got the driveway to the rest of the park, not going through the lease. I don't know how critical that would be, but it seems like if you're drawing bound lines, you may as well put them in sensible places.
Through the Mayor, Councillor Gibson, I may need your expertise there. I drafted this, and the shared driveway doesn't appear to be shared in the mapping tool that I've used. Would you be happy to give me just a bit of intel on the line of the shared driveway as you see it? Because the information I've got, historical data, is that driveway, the form driveway, was constructed by the TFS in the day and goes directly to the building itself.
It also sweeps around into the... I'm pretty sure. I mean, I've driven through that a few times. Yeah. And the map shows the
concrete hard stand driveway. It's concrete hard stand is the driveway of the fire station.
No,
and
not
then
the gravel.
is the
yeah, I was only talking about the gravel.
into the thing. But I'm not sure. I'm not aware of any conflicting problem of the shared driveway.
I don't think there would have been.
We have a member of the Craddock Fire Brigade here who can give me a nod if he's ever.
There's never been a problem.
Never been a problem? No, I've never heard of a problem, so I don't think it's a...
They don't park over
what's
it
the
or
issue we're
anything?
trying to solve?
Just, that the lease doesn't include that bit of the driveway. I mean, I don't know. It's just, you don't know until a problem arises. Highly unlikely, but...
I can definitely clarify the point of shared or unshared or exclusivity. That won't be a problem at all.
Yep.
It looks like there's lots of small titles along the road and all sorts. It looks quite
Yeah,
complicated
it's a
based
messy
on
little spot.
Page 198.
Yep.
So the lease doesn't look like it starts until it's over whatever that little chunk of land is there. But
I imagine if a fire truck's coming out, you'll just get out of the way quickly.
Absolutely.
I think I can double check those operational matters within the lease with the TFS at the time that we're negotiating the final term.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I'll make sure the mapping is.
I might add that report said they weren't sure when it was built. It was actually built in 1969.
1969, thank you, sir.
so were you nailing in the nails of that, sir?
Sorry,
Were you nailing the nails of that, sir?
Thanks,
We're
Nigel.
having public here that know these factual things.
Is there any other comments on that one? No? Okay. Councillor Councillor O'Neill, you don't, nothing? All right, well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's all councillors, the motion is carried. Report number 15.036/24, Stormwater Management Policy for Development. Have a councillor to move the motion. Councillor Ford, seconder. Councillor Jessup. Councillor Thorpe, do you wish to speak to this? Any other?
This is what we did in the workshop in a fair bit of detail, so and it fills a gap that the new planning scheme has left for us to fill. Thank you, Minister.
No, yes, councillor.
Through you, Mayor, can I just comment too, whilst we're, upfront and central to those that are watching or are going to watch, a lot of talk about, we've covered this in workshops tonight. I'd just like to explain to people that we actually haven't come up with pre-existing ideas of what we're doing with these things. We've covered these in workshops because they've all been very in-depth documents that have required a lot of time to go through them. So we are not hiding things by having workshops because this is the 4th or 5th time a workshop has been mentioned. We've just had a lot of work to get done and we couldn't possibly, mat it all out at a meeting. Just so people know.
Thank you.
And our entire policy review program that we're doing, every single one of them is going to get workshopped.
That's
so
right.
we'll go into a lot of depth
That's
before
right.
it comes here.
And I think people need to realise they are very big documents that take a lot of very complex.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problems. Any other? No, closed. Councillor Thorpe? No, closed, no? Okay, well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, the motion is carried. Report number 15.037/24, Developing Tasmania's Next Disaster Resilience Strategy, discussion paper. I refer councillors to recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Missouri? And Councillor Robertson. Lucas, would you like to speak to this?
I think it's just great to see that there's action taken to develop a strategy how to deal with disaster and disaster resilience. We've seen in the past month, how affected our community has been and how long it took actually to get, some services and functions back to running. So having a strategy in place that focuses on adaptation, mitigation, and resolving emergency issues is, I think, a valuable thing to have in place. So good to see it actioned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other comments? No? All right then. If there's none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, the motion is carried. Report number 16.019/24, Financial Report, August 2024. I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Armstrong, seconder. Councillor Gibson. Do you wish to speak to this?
Not at the minute, Mayor. Thank you. That's all.
Do you have any other questions or, yes?
Just a brief comment, which I guess just relates to an inaccuracy in attachment 8 on the councillor allowances. I think councillor or former councillor Jenny Campbell-Smith has been listed twice. My name doesn't appear. Instead, her name appears, and with the allowance that has been paid to myself in August. So, picked up on the repetition of Jenny Campbell-Smith in the list, and myself not appearing.
Apologies, we'll correct that in the.
No worries at all. Just a small inaccuracy. Otherwise, nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, councillor Jessup?
Mayor, I think, and I can't find the page, my apologies, but I'm sure Paddy will know exactly where it is. It says in the document that we do not have any debts. From memory, we had a debt but I'm assuming that's been paid out, so we don't owe anybody anything.
Through you, Mayor, we obviously have creditors and accrued expenses, but no, in terms of an interest bearing
It was a
not
TAS,
loan liability, we don't know. It's normally through TASCorp.
it was a TAS Corp one previously, wasn't it?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you, well done, paying off our debts.
Any other questions? No? Well, if that's the case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors and the motion is carried. Financial reserves, as at 30th of June 2024, report number 16.020/24. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor, who was it? Yep, Robertson, sorry. And Councillor Thorpe. Do you wish to speak to this, Councillor Robertson?
No, I'm happy.
Thank you. Happy? Do I have any questions or?
I just have one, Mayor.
No.
Sorry, it's just a clarification of a word. What is shotcrete?
Shotcrete is a sprayed concrete product, so that it gets into all little nooks and crannies, and you typically use it like reinforcing around bridge abutments, for example, where there's historically just been rocks. It's actually been one of the improvements, the Building Back Better improvements we've done to harden up bridge abutments, culvert inlets, for example, so that they don't get eroded and have the same problems we've had in the past.
So how many, roughly, for $125,000, 526, would you get a lot of bridges out of that, or is that an expensive product to use?
It's a
Because I've never heard of it before. I've never seen it before on the thing, which is why
I can take you for a drive and check it out if you'd like.
I'll just check it out on my next rounds when I go past a bridge.
Yeah, any bridge that most bridges that we're doing abutment work on now, it's half of the course. Sorry.
The Geeveston pedestrian.
Yep, so any of the bridges that were damaged in the August 2022 flood event that we had
So
down
it's
here.
fairly affordable.
Yeah, and it's avoiding further problems down the track. It's hardening those structures up.
So what did we use before that? Just out of interest.
Rocks.
Okay, right, so it's much more effective.
It's basically a truck that has a big pipe that people spray it on.
Yeah.
Slow drying.
It's a bit like the
High
new,
pressure blown concrete with aggregate in it, and you can have different densities and whatever else. We've formed drains out of it. There's all sorts of stuff that.
see, I'm just learning all this construction business. Ah, thank you.
If anyone's in Huonville, like where the flood road, where the new bypass, whatever it's called, Link Road is going. The large culvert there at the top of the Skinners Creek walking track, where that's been reformed. Historically, that just had concrete abutments and rock packing. That's all now been done to a more modern standard, and it's all shotcreted. So it's a pretty common new material. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll be looking out for that on my next drive over a bridge.
You will.
Just preventing all the work. Previously, when we've had a flood event, we go down and there's all this avoidable work because the actual structure of bridges, for example, or culverts is inadequate. So they all get eroded and everything gets washed away, and then we've got maintenance crews going and doing things that we could avoid if we actually made the structure better.
Yep.
So it's something we've been trying to get the state government to support us with. Yep. And after that August event where we got a bunch of money the state built it back as it was, and this council made a commitment to invest in that additional, do it better. So next time we're not putting emergency service people or council workers out doing things that we think we could avoid by.
Do it once, do it well.
That's the idea. Yeah. Until a bigger flood comes along.
That's right. We just won't talk about that today. No, that's cool. Thank you.
Any other? If that's the case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. Motion is carried. Median Place. Report number 18.009/24. Consent to develop outside the building envelope applicable to 76 Bull Oak Way, Grove, CT 181367/11. I refer the councillors to recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Robertson and Councillor Burgess. Councillor Robertson, do you wish to speak to this?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, do I have any other questions? Or yes?
So what's the purpose, is the purpose of the building envelope to restrain the amount of building on the block? Because looking at this picture on page 269, I can see why they need to build outside the building envelope, because the house fills up the whole building envelope. So they're just building a shed next door. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with that if it's not interfering with other people's amenities, so that's probably one question is, and these aren't exhibited, so I'm assuming we don't get next door neighbours don't have a chance to complain. So that would be my only concern. It looks like it's a big dwelling. Obviously, the building envelope was put there for a purpose. And do we know if it's going to affect? I can't see enough to see if there's where the boundary of the property is, but I'm assuming it's not. Yeah, it's still offset appropriately from things. That's sort of a question. Yeah, from the boundary. Yeah, it's next to the road by the looks. Yeah.
Did you want to explain these?
Yeah, I was gonna, yeah.
Sorry.
This subdivision is a problematic one, just because it straddles essentially now 3 planning schemes. So when it first started, while the DA number is referencing 2022, this started before the interim planning scheme.
Yeah.
And if you look at the provisions, there's an acceptable solution that allows you to then reflect a building envelope on the plan of subdivision, and then you don't have to address the performance criteria. Fantastic, you get into the acceptable solutions. The problem comes when you get to the development stage. They just drew a notional 30 by 30 building envelope with not really that consideration around the nuances of building an actual dwelling on that property. So this is why we get all these reports coming through for this, because when it comes to the practicalities of the development, it doesn't fit into the developer's building envelope that they put there to meet an acceptable solution. The other point while I'm talking is the Part 5 agreement is also problematic, as Councillor Robertson pointed out, in that, again, it straddles numerous planning schemes, and this is the poster child of Part 5s that we don't want to replicate. So we have taken some strong learnings from this one, and we make sure we don't replicate the same mistakes that were made with this in our more current Part 5 agreements.
Is this the third or the second of these building envelope ones we've had?
Five.
Yeah, we've had a few prior, yeah.
We did look through, we did look for ways we could maybe limit this process, but at the moment we haven't found a way that we can do that, bar this
process.
So how many blocks are there? How many of these will we just be?
There are 20-something blocks.
Excellent.
Which is why we've added that recommendation C to this, just to get it on there that, and every time we're having these and we're all going, yep, let's find options, let's find different ways to be more efficient. And so we're putting it there so that we can, deal with these benign ones in a more expeditious way.
It's also just trying to make building cheaper for people. Every time they have to get a consultant to write a bloody letter to us, it's another, just
Pay for more
crazy.
fees.
All right. So, do we have any other questions about Bull Oak Way? No?
Not today.
Okay. All right. If that's the case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion's carried. All right. So now, 19.044/24. We're about to move into closed council, so I'd like to thank those in the gallery tonight for attending and those watching at home. The next ordinary meeting of council is on Wednesday the 30th of October at 6 p.m. Thank you. Bye all.
We should give Meritorious Award for sticking out.
The recommendation is that the meeting now be closed to the public as at 8:06. Pursuant to Regulation 15 of the Meeting Procedures Regulation to discuss the following matters. Do I have a councillor to move a motion to go into closed? Councillor Armstrong and a seconder, Councillor Gibson. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. I advise that in accordance with the Huon Valley Council's audio recording of council meeting policy